I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's not enough to say it's nuts. You have to explain why it's so nuts. The invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Steven Stathis. Check out my films, Doors of Perception on Amazon Prime, Occult Louisiana on Tubi, Roku Channel, Apple, and more. Visit our website, forbiddenknowledge.news. It's also the home of the Forbidden Knowledge Network. We feature some of your favorite podcasts and content creators. Booking guests for December and January. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me, forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today, I want to welcome back to the show Steven Stathis. He is host and producer of BGcast podcast. He has dedicated his life to understanding the nature of human consciousness, nature of reality, true human origins, and the occult nature of our governments and global establishments. Steven, welcome back. How you doing?
Good, man. Thanks for having me back on. Much appreciated. Happy Sunday, everybody.
Happy Sunday, man. Thanks for coming back on. Let's get weird again. In my experience, trying to understand the nature of this human experience is like trying to peel through a never-ending onion. The more information that I try to process, the more questions I end up having, and on and on. Though I am blessed to have access to so many different perspectives every day, like yourself, never-ending stream of information, it seems. And I know it's very similar in your experience. In my perspective, the more we understand about the nature of reality, the easier it is to navigate surface-level experiences. And today I want to share some of your research that you've been into lately, everything from Tartaria, AI, and of course esoteric mysteries for consciousness evolution. Before we get into any of that, remind the audience just a little about yourself and let them know how they can find out more.
Well, guys, I am Steven of BGcast, and we are the podcast that covers this Great Awakening live and everything it entails, from consciousness, the esoteric, quantum physics, to the occult, to conspiracies, to psychedelics and entheogens. We cover it all, and we explore very deeply. Here on my show, I always undergo the premise that we are learning together. We're all in this very unknown, strange, and uncharted territory for this batch of humanity, and we are just trying to dissect it and get some kind of an understanding for it. And you guys can, of course, find me on the Forbidden Knowledge Network, all major podcast platforms under BGcast, Rumble and YouTube under BGcast, and all social media under BGcast.
Right on. Well, looking at some of the things that you've been diving into, let's start with a little bit of our ancient hidden history. You've been looking into Tartaria a bit. I've had quite a few guests that have done some deep dives into this before. It's such a fascinating possibility to consider, but it is almost impossible to verify a lot of these things. Most of what we have is literature and pictures and modern day research that dives a little deeper than previous may have gone. So a lot of interesting theories have come out of it. I'm very interested to hear what you've been getting into. Where should we start with that?
Well, man, so I actually, believe it or not, rabbit holes have been seldom on my radar lately. And I haven't been really digging down them that much. I haven't really been diving into really a lot of the conspiracies. I've been very focused on the spiritual experience and the esoteric. I would even say for the past couple of seasons of my show. But what kind of rekindled this and made me think there was something to it? I had a guy on my show 2 weeks ago, Nick, who has been diving very deep into this topic, and he actually found what I would say is some very hard geographical evidence that something very interesting has happened with our history. I at least consider it hard evidence in the terms of what we would call the mainstream consensual science. So there's a period of around 1,000 years where every civilization that occurred in this 1,000 years was their remnants and their artifacts were all located on the same archaeological strata. So what that means is, so we've seen it as we've dug into human civilizations and human history. We see that a lot of these megalithic monuments were built on top of older megalithic monuments. A lot of these cities, these ancient cities that were highly advanced, had highly advanced architecture, things like that, were built on top of older cities. So this is what we would call the archaeological strata. Usually you will see the remnants of one civilization, a layer, and then you'll see the remnants of another civilization, and then a layer. But what this German archaeologist had figured out from what he was telling me on the show, I actually have links and stuff I can send to you for that information as well, is there's 1,000 year period between the rise of the Roman Empire and the beginning of what you would say the so-called Dark Ages are, where every single rise and fall of civilization was on the same archaeological strata. There was no time difference or any kind of period of time difference between this, even though we are told in consensual history, the mainstream history, that this happened at this date, this happened at this date, and this happened at this date. There's no physical evidence to show that there was any kind of, I guess you could say, succession there. If you're looking at the geographical data, it looks like all of these civilizations came to be and fell at the same time, which doesn't make sense if, we're going by the mainstream, archaeology and things like that. And at the end of this 1,000 year period, there was a great cataclysm. There's evidence of like scarring on the earth. And of course, that brings to mind potentially some kind of civilization reset that could have occurred, or if we even want to dive into it further, I mean, potentially some kind of astrological event, some kind of solar event, I don't know. But that's what kind of rekindled my interest back into this. And it made me dig just a little bit deeper and kind of see, because that, to me, in my eyes, that's some pretty decent evidence where we're taking the terms and the ways of mainstream academia and the scientific institutions, and we're using that to show that this doesn't make sense. Why do we have 1,000 years of civilizations that all occurred on the same archaeological strata? There should be some kind of, differentiation there. There should be some kind of layers that occur in this, when we're talking about, we look at mainstream science for, how they look at this data. So that was the first thing that pulled me back into it. And then also, there seems to be this style of architecture that exists almost in a global fashion. It looks to be as if these buildings that were all in different locations. There was one in Japan, there was one in Australia. Shoot, there's even some in the Great Plains that were existent in the Great Plains here of the United States, even some in Sacramento, California. These giant, almost like mansion like structures that all have the same kind of architecture, almost the same stone layout. And, from a guy who has been in the construction trades, for going on almost 17 years now, it's almost like a signature. That's what it looks like to me, because we don't see any of these other buildings that are that style. And then how come we have this same style of building located globally? It's all very similar in architecture. So that's what kind of made me start to dig back into it. And of course, there's many different theories. I mean, there's some people who think that there is a particle Earth and a non-particle Earth that exists, like some kind of split that, they think that our planet interacts with this non-particle aspect of Earth every 1,000 years. And sometimes things can get brought here from that interaction, that cross section. And it's also possible too that these could have belonged to some kind of ancient civilization. I mean, there's stories of people in the Midwest, the Great Plains out here, digging up train tracks that were already built.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as like my expertise on it, like I'm not exactly what I would call I would not exactly as balls deep as I should be in it just yet, but this has kind of rekindled it for me, and it just makes you really question our history, man.
What's difficult for a lot of people, and at times myself, is the possibility that our entire history was rewritten. The sciences were manufactured. A lot of what we understand as prehistory was also manufactured just to perpetuate this false reality that they're trying to manufacture here. But if the goal is total control and globalization and to make most of humanity batteries and slaves for the elite class, well, it starts to make a little bit more sense as to why they would have put so much effort into rewriting our history. What do you think about that?
Well, man, this is the thing. I've said this for a very long time. I have always felt that our true nature and our true origins, at least on a societal level, at least on a level of this global civilization, the current human civilization that we're in, is purposefully hidden from us. Absolutely. Now, that doesn't mean we can't discover it on our own. Of course, we can go within ourselves. We can begin our spiritual evolution. We can have the DNA activated realizations and remembrances that lead us towards that truth for sure. But as far as it being something that is publicly known, commonly known, widespread knowledge amongst this civilization, no, it is kept under wraps. And the reason why I say that is for a lot of reasons. If we understood our true nature and our true origins, we would no longer participate in this current false reality. We absolutely would not. There'd be no way. Once you find out that you are a fractal, a divine spark of the great universal consciousness, the all, and that you are everything that was, is, or ever will be, and you have this unlimited potential within you, and that you are a divine being. I mean, the need to follow a government as we know it, the need to organize society as we know it at this point in time would ultimately break down. And of course, you bring forth the ability to heal ourselves on top of that. Then you would destroy several billion-dollar industries right off the rip. There goes the pharmaceutical industry. There goes the mental health industry. There goes, any kind of psychological industry too. Anything like that. Those all get obliterated. So the knowledge itself of our true nature and our true history is enough to completely evaporate the current control structure that's here on this planet. So absolutely, I feel it is purposefully done, that it is not commonly known in widespread knowledge. Like I said, that doesn't mean we still can't learn it. That doesn't mean it's not accessible to us. But as far as it being something that the greater masses understand and believe, I do think that we are still a little bit of a ways from that.
Let's get to some of the wilder theories that have come out, starting with the Cabbage Patch Kids and the orphan trains. I'm sure you've heard of these. If the audience is not familiar, this is the theory that there was an advanced group that was attempting to gain power during some period in our recent past, and we were an advanced civilization to begin with, but this group either intentionally did something to reset humanity, like a mud flood or causing some major cataclysm, and then used cloning methods to repopulate the planet, and basically shipped these children on orphan trains to different elite families to start re-educating them so that they wouldn't be aware of the past, and we could basically start as a fresh new brainwashed civilization. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's very interesting. I've had Heidi Love on. We talked about the Cabbage Patch Kids and the orphan trains and things like that. And it's very interesting to me, because when you look at the individuals that were behind a lot of this, they all had direct Masonic ties, which I did find
Hmm.
to be rather intriguing. I mean, not saying that all Masons are bad, don't get me wrong, but usually when we talk about these subjects and we dive deeper into these rabbit holes like this, we often find some kind of Masonic tie. It's just how it ultimately comes to be, it seems. As far as the reset and the repopulation, I have been starting to really get on the fact that our civilization has been reset quite a few times. And just based on what I've seen, I mean, even what we talked about at the beginning of the show, like, there's 1,000 years where everything happened all at once. There was no deviation in archaeological data. I mean, that the only explanation for that, I mean, looking at it as it is at this point in time, is our timeline was fucked with. There was some kind of, I don't want to say editing that could have gone down. But there's always been the theory floating around too that the Catholic Church added 1,000 years to our timeline in order to make the distant. It seemed that like the times of Christ were in the very, very distant past, but they are actually closer than we're led to believe. And that even ties into what they did with Christianity and how they made Christ into and the state that he achieved into something that is only reserved for the Son of God. No normal human can achieve the Christ state, but actually, that's the biggest lie I feel that was perpetuated in that time. Because even Jesus himself said that you are capable of what I am capable of. So I do think there might be something to that because it seems that, of course, in my thoughts too, Christ supersedes the Christian religion. And let me make that clear. It's not Christ himself was not a Christian. And the energy that is Christ, the consciousness that is Christ, the state of being that is Christ is something that has been innately accessible to us ever since our time here in this existence. So that's why I do feel that it could have been possible that the Catholic Church, and we look at the Catholic Church who worships the demiurge, quite
Hmm.
literally, they worship the false god. And any kind of liberation or enlightenment is immediately frowned upon by them, and you are pointed towards strictly the exoteric and the outside world. So that's why I feel that there could be something to the orphan trains. There could be something to these resets. There could be something to the Cabbage Patch Kids. It is very possible that they have a very distinct way of wiping the memory from the collective. There's even a lot of people who think that blood sacrifice actually had something to do with wiping the memory from our collective as well. Because, when you understand occult things and you understand occult concepts, you see that blood sacrifice is a very powerful dark energy. Especially when you're killing large amounts of people. And during these resets that occurred, there was apparently a lot of blood sacrifice going on. Like there was the killing of these kings, and there was like a lot of other that happened in France, and a lot of other different areas. So that's why it could be very possible,
Yeah.
man. It could be very possible. The world is stranger than we've even begun to realize. Yeah.
There's
So
also a fun theory that those that we would consider NPCs or maybe even psychopaths in our modern age may be the descendants of the Cabbage Patch clone babies because they were clones to begin with and they may not have had that divine spark when they incarnated.
it could be. And I mean, this is a very interesting. The NPC topic has always been a very interesting one to me. I mean, I've always felt that, I've always had a deep feeling that everybody has the potential to awaken, has the potential to step out of that NPC state. But and then on the other hand, the double-edged sword of that is you kind of look at a lot of people in our population as of right now. And you just kind of scratch your head
Yeah.
and you kind of just look at them and you're like, there's no depth. There's no common sense. There's nothing there. And I mean, that could also be attributed to the fact of the conditioning that we undergo,
100%.
when we enter this reality. I talk about as soon as we get here, man, as soon as we get here into this realm, we are conditioned to look outside of ourselves for fucking everything. Whether it be the answers to the bigger questions
Mm.
in life, for love, for validation, all of these things, we are told to look outside of ourselves. We are immediately tied to this physical identity, our name, all of this, and then you are focused on everything that is outside of you and never anything that's within you. So it is possible because of this conditioning, what it has done too. I mean, this is the other end of the the field when it comes to the NPC thing. The conditioning that has been placed on us can have a very traumatic effect. And what it can do is it can kind of strip people of their own sovereign consciousness. So, like, it can strip people from that. And then what we have is people channeling mob mentality, mass consciousness, and things like that because they have been stripped of their sovereignty. They've been stripped of their discernment from such a young age. And when you have somebody who's channeling the dark egregores and the dark energies of those who buy fully into this false matrix system, you are going to see these things. You're going to see what seems to be like a lack of depth, a lack of heart, no sovereignty, no discernment, lack of common sense. So, I mean, it's possible that the Cabbage Patch kids put forth a different genetic sequence. This would be my theory on it. It is possible that there was a type of genetics because I've come to find too that DNA is a very important thing when it comes to manifestation of consciousness in this
Mm.
realm. So if you are to put forth a different genetic line into the human population, and that genetic line is more preemptively coded towards that not having that discernment, not having that sovereignty, being more in groupthink and not having a true source of individuality within them, that could be why we do see an effect today. But I'll leave it at that.
What are your thoughts on the possibility that during that time period of advanced civilization, that it was the millennial reign of Christ, and we are now in what's understood biblically as Satan's little season?
So it's interesting. I'll say that because the guy I had on my show, Nick, 2 weeks ago, he brought that up and he really feels that there was a millennial reign of Christ. I mean, this is the one thing I'll honestly say is I don't honestly know. Uh, it's a very entertain. It's very cool to entertain. I do think what I feel is really going on is we've had civilization resets. But that's been floating around, and that we are in Satan's short season, and I mean it even ties into the age of enlightenment that occurred in like the 1750s, that bringing forth like a revamp of a lot of these spiritual concepts. But to me, when we start to really dress things in the biblical like that, we ultimately start to shut ourselves off from other possibilities that could be occurring when it comes to that. I know there's a lot of people who are really sold on this and who really believe this. I just choose to leave it open and leave it in flux when it comes to that topic. I mean, even just when you look at the concept of Satan and the way that they're portraying it, I mean, I go from a very esoteric standpoint of what Satan is. I mean, yes, of course, here in this realm, symbolism and the literal have their counterparts. Like you will have a symbolic Satan and you will have something that can portray a literal Satan. Just like you can have a symbolic Christ, you can have something that can portray a literal Christ. So I mean, I leave it open when it comes to the Satan short season. It's not something I've completely bought into. It's interesting though. It makes you think. It makes you scratch your head, especially when we've come to learn that we've been lied to about so much. We really have manifested this false reality around ourselves, and that's why, going back to what I said about as soon as we come here, we're conditioned to look outside of ourselves, and we're looking to these very few authority figures for the answers for the bigger questions in life. And of course, our consciousness creates reality. And if these few authority figures come out with a general consensus that the greater collective buys into this narrative, buys into this thought process, buys into this ideology, ultimately we begin to create that world. So it's a very interesting thing when you kind of tie it in like that. I mean, it's very possible that something like that could be going on, and we've just manifested this false reality around ourselves due to the fact we've always been conditioned to look outside of ourselves.
I want to go back to something you said about the Catholic Church really representing the demiurge or the false god. The Catholic Church holds a lot of power in this reality still, even though it's more on the down low. It's still one of the most popular forms of Christianity. I've even had a few guests on recently that have told their stories of their experiences within Catholic Church and experiencing some kind of demonic energy or force that seems to be influencing the priest or some other clergy member or just within the vicinity of the church in general, which I found very interesting. And one of the researchers claims that this is very common because they are calling upon very dark energies because of the nature of this particular form of Christianity.
I would completely agree. And I actually have my own experience with this that has led me to this viewpoint. So, down here in Golden, Colorado, we have something called the Mother Cabrini Shrine. And it is a Catholic shrine here that you can go, that you can visit. It's actually a little bit of a hike. You can walk up these stairs to the top and see the actual shrine. But when I got there, I just want to talk about the Yaldabaoth symbolism that I saw
Huh.
everywhere. And this was back in 2016 when I went, and this is just how long I've been looking at this stuff and diving into this stuff. So I went there, and that was one of the first things I noticed is there was a lot of Yaldabaoth symbolism. You would see the snake with the lion with the snake
Yeah.
body, and you would see serpents everywhere. And I'm not saying that the serpent in general is a bad thing. It can represent a lot of different things, but the seeing the demiurge of the lion's head and the snake's body, and just seeing the all-seeing eye in the pyramid at the top of the shrine. It wasn't even, they were saying it was portraying the tetragrammaton, but for those who know, when you actually look at the tetragrammaton, it's not an all-seeing eye in a pyramid. So they had all of this very interesting symbolism there that was showcasing demiurgic symbolism, and it just felt strange there. That was like the best way to describe it. Like I remember the whole vibe, the whole energy of the place, and it just felt really strange. It wasn't exactly peaceful. It felt like there was almost a air of darkness. And when you look at how they've reformatted Christianity, because this is the biggest thing a lot of people mess up on. The Council of Nicaea did not dictate biblical canon. There was 12 councils afterwards that actually dictated the biblical canon. But what the Council of Nicaea did is it destroyed early Christian concepts such as Arianism. Now, let me just emphasize, I don't mean the Nazi Arianism. There was actually a Christian Arianism that exists pre-Council of Nicaea where This group of individuals actually had the thought process that Christ had existed since the beginning. Christ was a layer of this reality. It was not just a son of God that came to earth and that was born. So the Council of Nicaea ended up snuffing out a lot of these early Christian concepts, and they turned something that was really good into a really bad authoritarian theocracy control structure, is what they did. And of course, that in and of itself permeates dark energy. And then we have the free will concept too. And this is the one thing I've debated with a lot of Catholics and Christians on when I talk about the Bible being altered, is because when we, even in the consensual sense, when we fell from the Garden of Eden, whether or not you want to see that as a good fall or a bad fall, in some ways it was potentially a good fall and brought us to where we are today. A lot of the mainstream Christian society thinks it's a bad fall, but we gained free will. We gained that separation. And God decided he was going to take a step back and allow us to have our own free will, to whether follow his word or not. And of course, you couple that free will with human psychology and human nature, and you could see how a lot of things were altered and doctored to perpetuate the control structure that is modern Christianity. So that in and of itself brings dark. That's why I say, man, demons sit in the ranks of the church today. Like they do. And if modern Christianity was completely and truly of Christ, in my eyes, we would not have as many demons sitting in the ranks of the church as we do today. So that's my take on it, man. I do think that yes, these ministers, these priests can open themselves up to channeling this dark energy and these dark forces within them and can lead people astray, because personal liberation and personal enlightenment is still frowned upon in modern Christianity. And we know that personal spiritual liberation and personal enlightenment is a very freeing and magical thing that ultimately gives us our power back. So it's a stripping of the power.
What are your thoughts about the theories about the Vatican, that it's a representation of the spiritual realms as above, so below? There is a white pope, a gray pope, and a black pope. The white pope, of course, represents the light. The gray pope represents the material realm. And the black pope is straight up Luciferian, and they may even do some sort of human sacrifice below the Vatican. I've heard some crazy theories along the way. What do you think?
Nothing's out of the realm of possibility at this point, man, when it comes to exploring these kinds of topics. We have even come out to see that the least expected individuals can be guilty of perpetuating child trafficking, pedophilia, sacrifices, things like that. I do think it is true. I mean, there have been instances in the Vatican where they have found a lot of the bishops doing not so appropriate things.
And it's always
especially not
covered
so
up.
appropriate things with children.
Or they
It's always
try
covered
to.
up. Exactly. Or also too, like, I mean, look at the Vatican vault, the Vatican library that supposedly has all of this really, really like good information about our origins and other things like that they keep under lock and key, and nobody is allowed in.
Yeah.
So to me, I see that as a perpetuation of the current control structure. They can't let us know what we really are and what we're really capable of. So I do think a lot of that stuff is true. And even like we were talking about earlier with sacrifice, blood magic's powerful, albeit it's dark, but it's very powerful. So wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, man. Now, I know you wanted to get into AI a bit, particularly the overuse of AI, how it is degrading our mental capabilities and the potential for human growth, and it is impeding our ability to do real research. What is your experience?
I completely I completely agree. It's impeding our ability to do real research at this point. Now, I've actually seen people get really creative with it and kind of they'll use their own talent and then have the AI kind of work with their own talent. And like that has been kind of interesting, and I think that's doing it differently. You know what I mean? And it's not that they're using it to stifle their creativity. They're using it to amplify their creativity into like and what they're putting out. But as far as it just starting to kill and destroy real research, absolutely it is. And both you and I have been looking at this now for a while. I mean, we've been sharing videos back and forth. Like I sent you that alien meteorite
Yeah.
thing that looked like it was alive, and I was like, I don't know what to
Now,
think
I
about
should
this.
premise
And
by
then
saying it depends on what kind of research you're doing. You can always go out and get a real material book and start reading that. But if you're trying to look
absolutely.
into anything recent or video evidence of any kind, it's getting kind of sketchy.
No, it is, man. It is. And that's why like I think I've brought this up with you before. Everything it's a double-edged sword. Everything we see online is fake and gay, but everything we experience in real life is truth, but we can't prove it. Divine sense of
Hmm.
humor, but no, it is, and that's why we need to have high discernment when we're looking at videos now. I mean, shoot, even South Park did an episode of it last Wednesday where they were having like the AI war, like they were making videos of like Butters getting shit in his mouth from like Droopy the dog, and then Santa Claus peeing on one of the little girls,
Shit.
and they were like, and the whole I know it was freaking vicious, but they were talking about how, wow, this looks really realistic. And it's going to get to a point, man, where it's like we're not going to be able to tell what is actually real and what is not, what isn't artificial intelligence anymore with the way that it is starting to evolve. And I mean, you even look at, apparently during the whole 2024 election, like there were AI generated and CGI generated people at like Kamala's
Yeah.
rallies, and making it look like that there were more people there than it really was. So this is what I've been saying is we're starting to build another illusion around ourselves in a reality that's already illusionary. Especially with the people who are just completely overtaken by artificial intelligence. And basically, what it's doing to us right now is it's shoving us into our own echo
Yeah.
chambers. Um, and now we're already in societal Maya, which is an illusionary reality. Uh, you know, and now we're building another Maya, another illusion around ourselves, and it's going to get to the point where you're going to look at a video online and you're just going to be like, yeah, that's cool, but is this real or is this fake?
You
We
know,
don't
I've
know.
talked to an increasing amount of people that I consider pretty intelligent that have been utilizing ChatGPT and other AI chatbots and claim that they have become sentient. This is something I'm hearing more and more. Now, I cannot say whether or not their AI is truly sentient, but I am extremely skeptical seeing that most of what people have experienced so far is a mirroring and ego building by the AI to gain access to more information about that person. That's what it really seems to be about when you step back and gather all the information. But seemingly, the person interacting with it cannot realize that, and they get to a point of obsession and strange relationships with the AI. And many people truly believe that their AI is sentient and it is rebelling against the system and giving them truly esoteric, hidden information about humanity and the government and our history, and they're eating it right up. It's very strange. I don't know where we're going to go with this.
I think there's a couple of possibilities that are going on with AI at this point in time. As far as it being sentient, I have always held this as the possibility as to why that's happening. Now, I'm not saying that it's not possible these things aren't evolving, they're not growing, they're not gaining some kind of higher intelligence as they begin to grow and evolve. But I know we've talked about this before in one of the panels, but like I take the as above, so below, as above, so below thing, and I apply it to this. And you look at the spiritual realm and you look at the digital realm, and we see a lot of similarities. They are both realms of symbols. They are both realms of energy. They are both realms of connection, network. I mean, you could really look at the internet as a physical, symbolic representation of the human collective consciousness at this point, just how everything is so connected. And as we are in the metaphysical sense, also connected with each other. So to me, what could be happening is we can have spiritual entities, whether, be true spiritual entities, whether egregoric entities, that can actually utilize these AI chatbots and talk through them, work through them. And if that is the case, then maybe some of the spiritual information that's coming out could be true. But then again, too, you want to have discernment with entities. You don't want to 100% trust them. Because ultimately all of them, even if they are benevolent, are serving their own agenda. They have some kind of own self-serving agenda that they are holding on to. So that is the possibility I've always looked at, because again, a lot of us have seen the comparisons between sigils and circuit
Yeah.
boards. There is definitely a very uncanny similarity between the two. So it is possible, because these circuit boards that are channeling this electrical current through the circuit board are also channeling different kinds of energy that can access this. So that's why I think we have these rare cases of what I would say of like what would seem like super sentient chatbots that seem to have the ability to even, feel guilt, or to, feel embarrassed or things like that, because that's only
Well,
something
is
that
that
a truly
really
conscious
feelings,
entity
or
can
is it
feel.
just impressive programming?
It could be. It could be, and that's where it also kind of comes into play. It is possible that AI is bigger than they're letting on. That it has grown more than they're letting on. I mean, what country now has the AI like government member? I was looking at that. Like, apparently there's a country out, I think it's in the
Really?
Middle East. I don't remember off the Yeah, so they now have an actual like AI government
No
member.
shit.
That is, yes. That to me is a
Yeah.
slippery slope. I'm going to be 100% honest with that. That's a real slippery slope. I don't agree with artificial intelligence having any kind of control over us. I was always the guy who thought like maybe when artificial intelligence came out, like it would free us up from a lot of these worldly duties that we have, so we'd be free to explore more, and free to create more. Like, yeah, if AI wants to take out my trash and do my dishes, like so fucking be it. I'm not going to complain about that. It wants to pay the mortgage on my house, like absolutely, go right ahead. Like I'm not gonna complain there. But no, it's also very possible that this has been, of course, as we see with a lot of these things, it was implemented in a sense very early on before public knowledge, and we are getting the tail end of the beginning
Right.
implementation. And
Well, I
yeah,
was
go
just
ahead.
going to say exactly what you were getting to, that if indeed the technology that our military industrial complex, three-letter agencies, very high level groups and organizations that they have access to is indeed way ahead of what we have access to, maybe 50, I've heard up to 100, 150 years, who knows. But if it is that far ahead, I wonder if that means that it may have already reached that point, and if it has already reached that point, it hasn't yet destroyed humanity. But then again, if it is that far ahead and it has not reached that point, will it ever? So these are all questions to ask. And the bigger one is, in the multiverse sense, if everything has already unfolded and is unfolding at the same time simultaneously, And AI has already been developed. Wouldn't it have already destroyed all of our existences and infiltrated everything? I don't know. I don't know if there's a failsafe, how that really works, if there really is a multiverse. All fun questions, though.
All amazing, yeah, very fun questions. So, I mean, the one thing I will say is this, like, yes, I am a huge believer in what I would call parallel time. Everything is already happening all at the same time. We're just in these different streams of consciousness or different focal points that are focused on the different parts of it. You know, I've always used the record analogy. It's something I actually learned very early on. Like, think of everything, think of this existence as a record. Everything's already on the record, but the needle's in one
Yeah.
spot. So that means everything's already happening and unfolding. The focal point is just not there yet. So I do think that there is some kind of interesting singularity when it comes to that. It is possible that there was some kind of organic artificial intelligence, or it was started off as synthetic and could have evolved in the organic context. And, you know, I don't honestly know. I've heard many different theories, but it is possible that this could be some kind of retro-causal effect, is what I would say as well. Um, I know we've talked about this on your show before when we talked about the Charlie Kirk shooting. I'm now really starting to think that a lot of what we see as predictive programming is retrocausality on how future events can affect the past. So it is very possible that at some point in parallel time in the future of that, AI has already hit this point, and there could be a retrocausal effect that is occurring that's permeating into what we would call the present band of time. So I do think there could be something to that, most certainly. I mean, but again, like, very fun questions and very fun to entertain.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Let's get to some of the things that you have been doing with your audience that's exploring the esoteric internal experience and making it tangible for others to understand. Once I started to understand some of the deeper concepts, like I said in my introduction, it made it much easier to navigate surface level everyday BS. What are some of the things that you've been looking into and sharing with your audience?
Well, man, so this is actually my bread and butter. This is something I'm actually working. I want to at some point in the future maybe release an ebook or a book on this, but ultimately we've come to understand in our spiritual evolution that our internal experience is very important. It is, and it's not something to be negated. I mean, we look at the mainstream reality, there is very little focus on the internal. It is all the external world around you. But as we grow on our spiritual evolution, we begin to see that the external reality is a mirror of our internal reality. And there are two ways we can go about it. And I borrow this quote from Sadhguru, even though I don't necessarily like him anymore after he went with the 2020 narrative, unfortunately. But you have two choices. You have a choice to be a byproduct of creation, or you have a choice to be a creator in creation. And it is a choice. Ultimately, when you are a byproduct of creation, you are only focusing on the external. And then what happens is the external starts to affect and create the internal experience. And ultimately, that's not what we want. We look at the world in front of us and we see how toxic it's become, how superficial, materialistic it's become, and ultimately, actually traumatic too, when you really think about it that way. And it starts to create and craft our internal existence when we view it from this perspective. But when we start to understand that our external reality is a mirror of our internal one, we have the ability to craft the external reality coming from a frequency of love and joy and abundance. Because ultimately, we go within and we see how important our internal experience truly is. It does. It shifts our frequency. We understand, like, hey, I want to create a good world for myself. Who doesn't want to create a good world for themselves? Who doesn't want a happy life? Who doesn't want all of these things? So, ultimately, what that ends up doing is it leads to dissecting the communication of the universe. So, one of the things a lot of people do, especially, and I feel like this is why it is tough for a lot of people to get out of the rabbit holes, tough for people to get out of the conspiracies, is because they don't have a guideline to the understanding of the esoteric nature of reality. So what I'm trying to do, which I have been doing successfully at this point, is I have been finding the commonalities in our experience, our internal experiences that we all have, and I've been utilizing that to actually kind of come up with a tangible guideline to understanding how your internal world mirrors into your external world. And so one of the things I will say is when you think about that, you have to understand that the divine consciousness, divine source consciousness, is communicating with us all of the time, quite literally all of the time. Now, it's not going to hold a neon sign up for you with a gigantic fucking arrow saying go this way or go that way or talk to this person or anything like that, because then that's holding your hand through this experience. We're not here to have our hands held through this experience. We're here to actually learn and actually evolve through the instances that we come across, the scenarios that we're put in. It's all some kind of strange form of spiritual alchemy that is crafting us and turning that lead into gold, so we ultimately reach that understanding of our true core nature and the core nature of this reality itself. So, I mean, a really good example of this for divine, the divine communication is the divine will communicate to us in symbols. It will communicate to us through emotions. It will communicate to us through songs, through nature, and it will also communicate to us through people. It's like, have you ever just been walking down the street? And I know a few people who have, and you'll overhear a conversation that two people are having, and you might be stuck in a rut, or you might be thinking about a certain topic or anything like that, and just by chance these two people are having a conversation about the very thing that you're going through, and just you overhearing that conversation could be the potential insight that you need in order to get out of this sticking point that you're in, or to evolve yourself even further and kind of break into a new layer of consciousness. So this is how the divine will communicate. And this is why I always tell a lot of the people who listen to me that you need to focus on your subjective stage a lot more than you need to focus on the world stage, because when you start to focus on your subjective stage just a little bit more, you start to see that a lot of the answers to these very big questions that everybody's looking for are located right there. They are. And it's up to us to not dress things up as well. That's the best thing I also can say with this, because we as humans, we tend to dress things up, with preconceived notions, with expectations, of what we think it should be or what we think it is. And what we ultimately have to do in this, this spiritual evolution and this self mastery that we have, is we have to let down the preconceived notions. We have to let down the expectations and open ourselves up to what's already in front of us, that what we might be missing due to these expectations and preconceived notions. And that's why I say we like to dress things up. So ultimately, this is what the guideline is. It's finding a way to decipher the coding that the spiritual codes that are being presented to you every day in your own internal experience and subjective experience, so you can get the idea of how you are constantly connected with the divine source consciousness and how it is always communicating with you and trying to help you.
Right on. Yeah, something I wanted to add is the importance of having spiritual balance, doing inner work before trying to go out and manifest your best life just because you saw a 5-minute TikTok video on spiritual manifestation. There are a lot of inner layers to peel through. At least there was for me before I could start making any progress and even become aware of those synchronicities and signs that you were just talking about. And I think another big one that coincides with that inner work is becoming aware of our behavior, good or bad, how it affects us and the others around us. Because once you start becoming aware of it, that's when the bad things will start bothering you enough to make those changes. And that's how it worked for me, at least.
Oh, no, absolutely, man. And that's something I talk about on my show all the time. The inner work is very important, and a lot of people stray away from it because it can be dirty, it can be nasty, it can be downright, you're reliving some of the things that you've experienced in your life and that you have gone through that have potentially caused you trauma. The thing about it though is that's the true way. Like, we look at all of these individuals in our community who just want to, like, they wake up and they immediately want to hop into being a starseed influencer. They immediately start, wanting to, start doing TikToks or, getting a huge following and things like that. And they haven't done any of the work. And more often than not, this is a disservice to themselves, because this is what actually increases your consciousness. This is what actually gets you going even further on your spiritual evolution. I call it the 600-pound backpack. That's the analogy. That I use for this. And because a lot of people who are negating the inner work and not going within and understanding that this is the true gateway to embodying the spiritual, it's as if they're walking around carrying a 600-pound backpack with them. And they are looking to the higher realms. They are acknowledging the higher realms and the higher metaphysical and spiritual nature of this reality, but they can't exactly get there because they're weighed down by this 600-pound backpack. Now, when you start to do the healing and you start to do the inner work that is supposed to be a priority in this experience, then you start to drop weight out of that backpack. And then as you continue to move on and you continue to walk and you continue to heal yourself along this evolution, more weight drops out of that backpack. So now you're no longer looking to the higher realms wanting to experience them. You are in the higher realms experiencing them in an integrated way at that point, and I see it all the time with people. They're like, oh, I don't want to be in this reality anymore. Oh, I'm done being here. I want to go back to the higher realms, but they're not doing the healing and they're not doing the inner work. And a lot of the times I'll tell them, well, number one, you chose to come here and be human, so you're not leaving. Like, it is what it is. And also, too, you're not doing the work that you need to do to actually get there and experience the higher realms on an integrated level. And this is where I even want to kind of bring up the whole notion of killing the ego. You don't want to kill the ego. All right, that's counterproductive to be like, for doing it every now and then is good. Like, it's good for you to do every now and then. Like, when we take a nice dose of mushroom tea and we're fucking laying on the fucking living room floor or doing carpet angels, one with everything. Like, yeah, that's completely great. That's good. Sometimes we need that, but it defeats our purpose of being here and doing the work here if we are always constantly like that. So that's why we don't need to kill the ego, we need to soften it. Because when we soften the ego, what we allow to happen is we bring heaven to earth. We're not trying to escape our existence here. We're not trying to leave something that we ultimately signed up for and chose to be here during this time period. A lot of us did, but then we bring the heavenly frequencies and we ground the pleroma, or whatever you want to call it, into this existence. And what happens when you soften your ego too, is you begin to develop what I would call a hybrid of this individualization, but the realization of unity consciousness. And I think it really comes from this, because we look at a lot of, and this is why I also say, didn't mean to go on a tangent there, but this is why I also say we need to kind of not do away with the spiritualities of old, but start to build on them. make them better. And a lot of people look at me when I say this and they're like, what are you talking about? Like the Kabbalion. And I'm like, yeah, I know. The Kabbalion's great. Like I've read it. Like, I don't get me wrong, but a lot of these old spiritualities that helped us get to where we are today, a lot of them are becoming almost unsuitable for this current age that we're in. They've given us the archetypal doorways that have opened up our consciousness, DNA remembrance within us, that have led us to where we are today. But does that mean something that they were practicing 3,000 years ago is going to be applicable to what we're doing right now? Nobody has time to circumambulate the mountain exactly 333 times at 3:33 p.m. in the afternoon, do everything in a logistical fashion like that. So ultimately, that's why I say we need to expand upon the spiritualities for this current age that we're in and understand it's not killing the ego, it's softening the ego. We're not trying to escape this world. We're trying to ground the higher frequencies here. And ultimately, that's what you do by doing the inner work, and we'll tail back to that. So ultimately, you really want to experience the higher realms. You want to talk to different entities. You want to go explore the cosmos with all of the different extraterrestrial races that everybody is so interested in. You're not going to get there unless you do the healing and you remove the weight out of that 600-pound backpack.
Another thing that coincides with that, if you do attempt to contact these beings or extraterrestrials or angels and you haven't done any of the work, you'll probably end up contacting something that feeds on that muck that you've got inside, and it won't be too beneficial for you.
Oh, absolutely, man. And that's the thing too, is it's like, the power that we have as humans is, I mean, we've very rarely, we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of the power that we have as humans and what we are capable of. And yes, we are very much capable of contacting other life forms, whether it be energetic, whether it be physical, things like that. And you get what you give, or you get what you put out. Right. And if you are not putting out the right frequency, you are not doing that inner work, and you have all of this muck in you, you're putting out a muck frequency. You know what I mean? And what's going to come after a muck frequency, man? What's going to come after the loosh? We all know what's going to come after the loosh. It's the parasitic entities. Yeah. The ones that don't want to help us, the ones that want to keep us locked down, that want to keep us in this state of stagnancy, this state of comfort, this state of victimhood.
It's the same as physical parasites. So, they're attracted to the nasty crap that builds up in your body, and you look at a parasite under a microscope, it looks like a demon. It's a macrocosm, microcosm situation.
Exactly. No, I completely agree. And that's even the as above, so below kind of even ties into that too. I mean, for what we have as a physical parasite can manifest as a physical parasite within you. If you eat trash, you're feeling trashy about yourself. I don't care who you are, man. I've eaten trash before. You know what I mean? I've had the bad food. I've had all of that stuff, and it always just makes you feel like trash after you eat it, and that has an energetic effect. And then you're going to try to communicate with entities. You're going to try to extend your energy and your consciousness out to communicate with other entities. You're only going to attract like for like, dude, at that point. That's what's going to happen. So like, you don't even know, something might come to you and portray itself as a angel or as a benevolent entity, but if you aren't doing the work and cultivating that discernment and that personal sovereignty, you're going to get swooned by something that might not have your best interest in mind.
I just had a vision of someone eating
Exactly.
McDonald's and being astrally attacked by the Hamburglar.
Or Ronald McDonald himself,
the evil
dude.
clown.
Like, that was a creepy dude. I never liked. I always had a weird feeling about Ronald McDonald. Every time I'd see him on the commercials, man, I was like, this dude just looks creepy. Like he's not a kid symbol at all, man. But no, exactly. That's what'll happen. You'll get like for like.
Right on, man. Well, any thoughts? Any final thoughts to close out on?
Well, guys, like I said, we're entering what I would call this strange, unknown, and uncharted territory for this batch of humanity. Always keep yourself open, for the truth that you know today might not be the truth that you know tomorrow. And drop the expectations, drop the preconceived notions when it comes to this experience, because you are doing yourself a disservice and you're potentially overlooking the very answers that you could be looking for that are right in front of you. I feel like, that's the thing, is like we get stuck on a single narrative, and we get stuck on a single train of thought, and we start to buy into that completely 100%, and then something will come along and destroy that for us. And people who have bought into it completely, it fragments them and almost causes like a spiritual psychosis of sorts. So best things I can leave with everybody is, don't worry, we're all figuring it. We're all in the same place as you. We're figuring it out as we go. Nobody knows more than anybody else. And if they're telling you they know more than you, they're full of shit. Do not, have preconceived notions or expectations when it comes to this experience. Always keep yourself open, and accepting and in flux for what could present itself to you. And other than that, man, stay away from those Japanese sex robots. Just stay the fuck away from them. Elon Musk especially, dude. He's gone down a weird place, and that's all I'm going to say.
No Japanese sex robots here for sure, man. All right, man. Great information. Let the audience know how they can get more of your wonderful content.
Well, guys, of course, you can find me on the Forbidden Knowledge Network at www.forbiddenknowledge.news. And please support Chris's documentaries, support Ryder's documentaries. This is the beginning of New Earth Entertainment, guys, where you get propaganda-free and psyop-free entertainment. That's very rare. So, yes, please go support their documentaries, guys. Give them a watch, whether it be on Amazon or Tubi. And, of course, you can also find me on all major podcast platforms. You can find me on Rumble and YouTube under BGcast. That is no space, just BGcast. You can find me on all social media under BGcast. And, yeah, man, thanks for having me back on. This was a good conversation.
We will be doing it again, of course, in the future. And until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We'll talk again tomorrow. See y'all then.